Hello everyone, I'm Naresh Chaurasia. I'm here to talk about Core Java. You can find me at messagefornaresh@gmail.com. Let us look at classes and objects in Java programming. Before you go through this presentation, make sure you have gone through my earlier video on classes and objects. For that, you can go to my channel on YouTube, and there is a video which is Core Java classes and objects. Please go through it. This is the prior discussion on classes and objects. So I'm assuming you have gone through the earlier discussion or module on classes and objects. So let us continue here now. Now I'm going to talk about fields and methods. They are also known as members for a given class. Now, as you can see, there are properties of an object. They are known as attributes of a given class. And attributes are defined by fields. So if you will look at this class person here age is an attribute and name is an attribute, and they are also known as fields of this particular class called person here. Also, we have behavior of object, which is known as methods. Methods are operation performed, meaning that this particular class, which is a person class here, it can perform various operations. One of them is to eat and another is to walk. So let me write a small piece of code and explain this concept to you. So let me go ahead and create a new class, and I'll call that as person. I'll right click. I will go to new option and create a class person. I will say finish here. Now, if you will come back here, I'll say int age, and then I will say string name. Now these are the attributes of this class person. Now let me go ahead and create these methods. So I'll say void eat. Inside this, I'll say system.out.println I can eat. So I'll say system.out.println. I'll make it I can eat, and I'll create one more method. For that, I'll copy this and I'll put it here, and I'm going to call it walk, and I'll change this to walk. As I have already explained to you, these are attributes and these are methods or behaviors, the operations or the functions that can be performed by a person. Now let us understand what is class instantiation, what is reference values and references. So instantiation, it is the process of creating object from a class. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one more class here, main class, I'm going to call it, and I'll create a main method here. I'll finish it. I'll come here and I will create an instance of person. So for that, I'll say person p equal to new person. So this particular line, execution of line number 8 here, is called instantiation of a class person. Now after that, an object is an instance of a class. So this is an object which we also call as an instance of a class. and it has a physical existence in the memory, meaning that it occupies memory in Java. So let me explain that with help of a diagram on my drawing board. So if this was a memory, if this circle denotes memory in Java, then when you run or execute this line number 8, there will be a reference P which is pointing to an object in the memory. So this is object of person, and P is referencing or pointing to that object. So an object is an instance of a class, which in this case is P. P is referencing that object, and it has a physical existence in memory. So if this was a memory, it occupies a space or it has a physical existence in memory. Now an object must be created before it can be used in a program. So if you want to perform some operation on this particular class, maybe to assign values to variables or call this method, we first have to create instance, or an object must be created before it can be used in a program. So continuing further, a reference value is returned when an object is created. So if you will see, person is pointing to that particular object, and that memory in the Java is known as heap memory. So let me go back to my code here. And if I go here, let me for the time being name it as person, right? Now this person, this particular variable is a reference to that particular object which has been created in the memory, as I just showed you in the diagram. So this is, let me rename this also to person. So I will rename this to person. So person is referencing or a reference to that particular object. Now an object can only be manipulated via its reference. What does it mean? It means that this is an object, right? So if you want to manipulate it means you want to maybe access one of its attribute, which is age. So in order to do that, I'll say person dot age equals to 20, for example. So now what I'm trying to do is basically I'm trying to manipulate that object, meaning that if I could open this object, this will have an attribute which is age, right? So age, I have set it to 20. So I'm using this person reference to manipulate this particular object. That is what I am trying to explain with this particular line. So object can only be manipulated via its reference, and because person is a reference, therefore I'm using this reference to manipulate the object. And manipulation of an object in this particular case means that I'm assigning a value 20 to age for this particular object. Now there is another point here which says by a reference that holds its reference value, or an object alias. So what does it mean? It means that, let's say if I say person p2 equal to person. Now when this particular line is executed, when I say person p2 equal to person, what happens is that there is one more reference p2 which is created and which points to the same object, right? Because I have assigned that person to p2. So now I have person and p2 pointing to the same object. It is like you have a name and you have a nickname. So if I call you by your name or your nickname, it is going to call you or the same object. Similarly, if I go ahead and make change to this particular object with p2 dot age, for example, equal to 25, then it will be actually making change in the original object, right? So first I display this value here. If I say system dot out dot println, right? So if I say person dot age here, initially it is going to display 20 to me. Now let me copy this and display p2 dot age here, p2 dot age. So we all know that here the value is going to be 20. Now if I display p2 dot age, it is going to be 25. So let's run this program and see that we get an output with values 20 and 25. Now if I again display this, then it is again going to display value 25 to me. Why? Because as I have already stated that P2 has updated the age from 20 to 25, right? And because P2 has updated and person is also pointing to the same object, therefore the value of age for the reference person is going to be new value, which is 25. So let us run this program and see what happens. Right click, run as Java application. So we can see the new value as 25. So basically the point I'm trying to explain here is that this reference and this reference, when they are pointing to the same object, if anyone makes changes to that particular object, it is visible to other reference as well. Next, let us look at what are fields. So each object created will have its own copies of the fields defined in its class. So what does it mean? That suppose I have one object which is person, and I will create one more. Let me copy this, and I am going to create person 2. So for the time being, I am going to comment this piece of code so that it doesn't confuse us. So I have created, and let me call this, okay, I'll leave it as person only. Now here what I can do is I can say person 2 dot age equal to 30, for example, right? Now each object created will have its own copy of the fields defined in its class. So I can say here person dot name equal to, let's say I'll call it Java, and I will copy this here and I will say person 2 dot name is equals to Python, for example. Now what has happened in the memory, if you will see, so let me just remove all of this and draw it again. So I have a person which is pointing to an object and person 2 pointing to another object. Now this one has its age as 20 and name as Java. This one has 30 and Python, 30 and name as Python, right? So each object created will have its own copies of fields defined in its class. So this has its own fields defined. This has its own field defined, right? Moving on, the fields of an object are called instance variable. Now we know that this is known as instance of a class. This is also known as instance of a class. So therefore these variables, which in this case is age and name, these are also known as instance variable, as they are associated or tied to this particular instance. Also this has age and name, and they are instance variable of this particular instance. So instance variable is a convention or name to denote or identify variables which are tied to an instance of a particular class. And each time you create an instance, they will have their own instance variables and their corresponding values. Now the values of instances variable in an object comprise its state. It means that For example, if you will see here, this person has age as 20. So the state of this particular instance can be denoted by its current age, right? So therefore, the value of the instance variable in an object comprise its state. Then two distinct objects can have the same state if their instance variables have the same value. So let's say, for example, let me erase this and let me go ahead and make this as 20 and this as Java. So both of them have same state, same state meaning that they exhibit same values for its attribute, but they are still two independent objects in the memory of Java. Now methods. What is a method? The method of an object define its behavior, or instance method we also call them. So if you will go back to this class here, and if I go to person, as you can see, it defines its behavior. So a person can eat, person can walk. These are some of the behaviors of this class called person. Now, it is important to note that these methods pertain to each object of the class, meaning that I can go to this class here and I can go and call this method. So I can say person dot eat, right? And I can also say here person2 dot eat, right? So each method, as you can see, that each method pertains to each object of the class, right? Now, this should not be confused with the implementation of methods, which is shared by all the instances of the class. What does it mean? It means that if you will see that this is a method with some implementation inside it, right? In this case, there is only one system.out.println, but in reality, it could be number of statements. So it means that if this is an object, and let's say we have some code which is commonly stored somewhere, which is a eat method, for example. So both of this method have access to that particular implementation, which is the method eat, right? So that is what I am trying to explain here, that this should not be confused with the implementation of methods, which is shared by all the instances of the class. So it is not that eat has implementation inside this and this. No, it is not like that. There is a common implementation of eat method, which is shared by the different instances of that particular class. And then finally, instance variable and instance method, which belong to objects, are collectively called instance members. So this instance variables and instance method, when they are put together, they are called instance members of a given class. I hope that this concept is clear to all of you. That's all in this video. I hope you enjoyed this session. Do not forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel, and leave your comment in the comment section below. Thank you.